Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Millennial Button Mashers Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a recent rumor that Sony is thinking about taking one of its old IP and reinvigorating it with a net new game. As many of you know, Sony has a lot of legendary IP like Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Infamous, just to name a few. In this episode, we'll be talking about that rumor, why Sony might be looking down this path, and my personal recommendation for a new game. If you know, you know. With that, folks, let's jump in. All right, so before we get started, I want to emphasize something really quick. Please take all of this with a grain of salt because all of these are just rumors and speculations. This was leaked by an insider gaming report that I'll also link in the show notes below if you'd like to read on for a little bit more detail. But the rumor that is circulating right now on Reddit is that there may be a brand new Infamous game in the works. The biggest caveat is that the original creators are not involved, the original developers. Also, a reliable insider, Nate the Hate, also posted on X the quote, "There is truth to Sony exploring and considering reviving some of their older, unused IPs." So with that, you can basically infer that if it's not Infamous, there could be some other IPs being looked at revitalizing for Sony in general. And quite frankly, that's got me excited on both fronts because it's been quite some time since we've gotten a brand new game from the Infamous series. I believe the last game came out for PS4 in around 2014 or so. And also, titles like Jak and Daxter haven't received a new game since the PS2 era back in 2009. So quite some time. Could be great to get those characters back in action, get those revitalized, and I'm frankly excited either way. But in tandem with this news, we also got confirmation on a previous Bloomberg report back in March that Sony is in fact moving narrative-driven single-player games to be exclusive to PlayStation consoles, and they're moving away from PC releases. So if you missed that report, it was rumored by Jason Schreier that Sony was deciding to move purely to exclusives and not releasing their titles on PC like they had been after a year or two of post-release. And this is something we talked about before, and quite frankly, both Gavin and myself are very bummed, but we do understand. Exclusives do drive sales. And so I want to talk a little bit about, on both of these fronts, why Sony might be looking to revitalize old IP. So my theory, and get my inside baseball hat here, I am speculating that they are doing this because they know nostalgia sells games, and so they want to revitalize old IP to get those players back in the door, and they know the exclusives specifically will drive sales of their recently increased prices of the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro. If you missed out on that, I'll also link a previous episode about the PlayStation 5 price hikes. But basically, my assumption here is that the reason why Sony is now looking down the path of revitalizing this old IP is really to dangle that carrot, give that first olive branch to the gaming community to hopefully boost sales of the PS5, given those recent price hikes. And again, if we're going to be able to play any of these newly revitalized series that we know and love and have tons of nostalgia for, makes natural sense that Sony would want us to shell out for a PS5 if we haven't already to get access to those exclusive games. Because like I mentioned before, in all those different games that I've mentioned, they are narrative-driven single-player games. So you could infer that Sony is trying to use this as an olive branch to hopefully get more people to buy more PlayStation 5s, and also trying to revitalize old IP as a gesture of good faith, let's say. And we know that exclusives actually do drive console sales. As a matter of fact, Nintendo Switch 2 is selling pretty well, even given recent price hikes, and that's because Nintendo does it best when it comes to exclusives. They've never given up their platform to be anywhere else other than inside of Nintendo. And it's really doing wonders for the brand and their identity and their console sales. And we also just heard that Xbox is planning on doing the same thing. Based off of a recent survey that they gave to the gaming community of Xbox fans even want to see exclusives specifically to the Xbox platform. So it's all kind of shaping in that direction. We're eventually going to go back to the console wars-like situation, which again is a little bit of a bummer because we don't get to see Sony's IP modded in the gaming community. And those fun mods that we've seen in the past with Spider-Man and others. So a little bit of a bummer, but I do understand it. So it will hopefully drive some competition between each of the brands, though. And hopefully we as the consumers will end up reaping the benefits of really good games, hopefully in the future. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Is that the same thing that you guys would assume based off of Sony potentially wanting to revitalize old IP? And also, do you think it will impact console sales? Let me know in the comments. And lastly, what I would like to see as Sony goes down the IP revitalization effort, you all know that I would love to see Sly Cooper back and Reinvigorated. And I loved that Sly trilogy. The other thing I want to say here too is Kevin Miller, which is the voice of Sly, is still very active in the community. And I think he could plug right back into the process, pick right back up from where he left. And that could be a great plug for us to get more and more 3D platformers. Like I've mentioned before, that's my favorite genre. There's probably a lot of nostalgia tied to that, but I just love the series, that genre of gaming. And I would love to see it revitalized. I would also say that I would love to see Jak and Daxter as well, as those are truly iconic characters. As I mentioned on the front half of this episode, the last game that we got in that series was around 2009. So it's been quite some time. Would love to see how they take a new spin on that genre. But before we wrap up, I also wanted to chat about a couple games that recently released that we're really excited about and we want to talk to you about. The first one is 007 First Light. And I'd be remiss not to say happy 007 Day to those that are celebrating. I'm personally very excited to jump into this weekend, but this is the first time we're getting a net new James Bond game in over 10 years since the last one, and it's being made by the creators of the legendary Hitman series, IO Interactive. Initial reviews from what I've seen are very, very positive. Of course, there's going to be quirks with every video game, so take that with what you will, but the reporters that I follow on an ongoing basis and I truly trust, I watched SkillUp's review of 007 First Light, as well as Jake Baldino's review in the Before You Buy for his Game Ranks channel. So if you guys are interested in checking those out, I would definitely recommend doing that. I also like the fact that Game Ranks also does another supplementary video that says 10 things the game doesn't tell you, so you can kind of come in with some a leg up, let's say, as you start that new series if you plan to jump in. The second thing on the indie front is we have a new game called Blackjack-It. And you guessed it, it's Blackjack It. So it's a game all about blackjack. And so this is a new game in the ever-growing category of roguelikes, but this time you're playing blackjack. I've played it over the past few days, and I have to say, I'm loving it. I don't know what it is about it, but it's got extremely addictive gameplay loops. It's almost like Balatro in the sense that it takes a simple card game, like with Balatro with poker, and now emphasizes blackjack. And as you guys are probably wondering, it's like, Dylan, it's, get to 21. It can't be that complex, right? It's a lot more complex than you think. There's a lot of mechanics here that makes it interesting and complex, especially when it comes to the bosses you get to interact with and their specific mechanics and quirks that they have. It makes it a lot more fun and interesting. And yes, it also makes it kind of frustrating from time to time. But that's this week's episode, folks. What Sony IP would you like to see revitalized? Are you excited about 007 First Light? Leave it in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. If you're new, subscribing is the best way to support this channel, and please share with a friend as we're trying to put out new content every couple of weeks. Until next time, everyone, stay safe and keep gaming.